Coming to you from the top of Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Welcome to the Tim McLoone Radio Show, where each week we bring you interesting, creative, and dynamic people from the worlds of entertainment, sports, business, food, and philanthropy. Today's guests are NHL star and three-time Stanley Cup champion with the New Jersey Devils, Ken Daneyko, and the executive director of the Food Bank of Monmouth and Ocean Counties here in New Jersey, Carlos Rodriguez. My name is Paul Diamede, and here's your host, Tim McLoone.
Well, thanks very much. Thank you, everyone, for being here in Asbury Park, as you just so well put it, Paul. High above. We're high above here on the second floor. We have to warn Ken. I see people I know personally who are Rangers fans, so this may not end well, but as long as it begins well, we're good. But some people just won't forgive anything. You know, ask Potvin. He knows all about that. But at any rate, you know, over the last few months since we've been doing this, every once in a while stuff, I as my father used to say, it's stuck in my craw. I don't know what a craw is, but we knew what he meant when he said that.
That's another one we have to look up, by the way.
I think
Stuck
we do.
in my craw.
Stuck in my craw.
Right?
But
I'll write that down.
I read the most disturbing article, I thought, in New Yorker magazine. For people that want to look for it, I think it's the June 3rd edition that's out right now. And it was about our veterans and about PTSD. And fortunately, a lot more attention is being paid to veterans now than may have been the case, you know, several wars ago. There's at least, if nothing else, a lot more talk about it. And some of it highly controversial. The hearings that are going on right now about sexual assaults in the military are beyond disturbing. But the overriding, I think one of the overriding factors of this is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think we would all agree that we have probably each of us experienced it on some level in some small way in our lives. But when you consider warfare and what can happen, and, you know, it made me, you know, I'm going to come off as just, you know, a peacenik and all that good stuff. And I'm actually pretty proud of that. But I think we don't think about the ripple effect that we send other people off to do nasty things for us. And particularly if you ask yourself who's entering the military, it really hasn't changed that much in the last 100 years. There are many people who enter for lots of good reasons, and not that there's bad reasons to enter necessarily, but there's other people that enter because they have to, or because of financial needs, or just it's a chance to get ahead in life.
To get into college and
you know,
get some structure.
For every person that goes to West Point, there's 50,000 of them who may not even have been able, they had to struggle to get through high school. I mean, they need a high school diploma to get into the military. And you can even talk about the immigrants that are going there. But it was this was just so disturbing, because remember we talked a couple of weeks ago about the dead man walking, and I always forget how to pronounce her last name, but Sister Helen Prejean or Prejean, depending on where you live, wrote that book. And even though it was about, and Sean Penn played the convict in it, and they're trying to decide, is he going to get the death penalty or not? But the book really was not only about capital punishment, but it was about the micro moment of the person who actually has to put the person to death.
Right.
That it's something we don't think about. You know, you hear about Texas has the most people put to death each year.
Capital punishment, the highest rate, yeah.
But somebody's doing that. And there's actually a human being doing it. And the same thing in a much larger scale goes into warfare. And we can do all the things we want to, in a sense, glorify the mission, and we're fighting for liberty and all the rest of it. But we're asking men and women to go out there and do heinous acts that we can justify them, and this is not about that, but it's the actual act that they have to perform. At any rate, this article talks about, and it was written by someone, I'm trying to find his name is Nicholas Schmidl, I believe, and it's the June 3rd edition of New Yorker. And he talks about kind of the ultimate PTSD story, and I was aware of half of this story, but I didn't know the other half of it. And there was a man named Chris Kyle who was, if you can be decorated for this, he was the most decorated, I guess, sniper in the history of our military, who had 160 confirmed kills. And they pointed out in this article that although he saved a lot of lives on the American side and, you know, and helped the cause and all the rest of it, he was doing that through a scope. So he's actually seeing
the intimate
you know, it's not dropping a bomb out of a
Right.
plane. And this is the kind of lighthearted stuff we do here, by the way, on the show. But he was seeing this happen, and he was struggling in his own life when he got out of the military, trying to find a mission for himself, and he decided to work with other veterans. And I'll wrap this up, but he he started training other people, and the word kind of got around that he would help veterans who were suffering from PTSD, and he had a program even to help them. And part of that program was going to a shooting range, because he felt if you took veterans who maybe felt more comfortable in a military environment, put a rifle in their hands, go back to the days of
that camaraderie
of training and
right.
the camaraderie of, and then you fire some rounds and maybe it helps you. Whether that's true or not, who knows? But certainly this ended tragically. There was another man named Eddie Ray Routh, I believe his name is pronounced, who was struggling mightily, and the Veterans Administration kept sloughing him off. They really weren't prepared for this level of a PTSD. Not to make excuses or to attack the Veterans Administration, but his family was going crazy. They were so concerned that he was just descending into a personal hell of schizophrenia or whatever, and he was becoming more and more frightening to them. Well, at any rate, they run into Chris Kyle, and they arranged for him to help him. It was just a chance meeting. And so he says, listen, I've got to go to a wedding next weekend, but the next weekend I'll take him out with me, and we'll see if we can help him out. So Chris Kyle and a friend of his take Eddie Ray Routh out to the shooting range. Eddie Ray Routh takes the weapon and shoots and kills them both. And I just found this to be so disturbing. It's the underbelly of the military that we are sending people to do these things, maybe in many cases people who are not really mentally firm enough in their own grounding, who can handle that, and then they come back and they act out. And I just thought it was beyond belief to read this article. You should all read it and see. I don't know that necessarily you draw a conclusion from it, but we should certainly, in our concern for veterans coming back, because it made me think about Bob Davison, who was our guest last week, who is the executive director of the Mental Health Association of Essex County. And we were talking about this and how trying to get more funds, more attention paid to people with serious mental illnesses, and we just don't spend enough money on it. And if we're going to start anywhere, we should certainly start with our veterans. I think we should do that.
Absolutely. Broadcasting from Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Listen to us every Saturday at 5 p.m. on WOR 710 AM, and follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at Tim McLoone Radio. Listen to this show as well as past shows on our website, timmcloonradioshow.com. You're listening to the Tim McLoone Radio Show. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back to the Tim McLoone Radio Show from Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park. And now, here's your host, Tim McLoone.
Well, I may be the host, but we've got a great guest today.
Absolutely.
And I was telling Ken Daneyko of the story that I'll share with everybody a little bit later. But Ken Daneyko, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We want to go back to your youth a little bit in a moment,
Sure.
but your career with the New Jersey Devils, and we're not a sports show here, but I think that when you meet people that are interesting, it doesn't matter if they're in sports, entertainment, politics, whatever. There can't be many people in the history of professional sports in the world that played 20 years with one franchise. Have you ever researched that? Or were there others?
Well, I know at one time I was top 3 in the history of the game. Players played, most games played and years played with one team. At one time, back when I was playing, I think it was first in all the sports, which I was very proud of. Even Darryl Green in Washington had played there a long time. I think it might have been surpassed, but it doesn't happen often. And I say it almost humbly, but certainly, and it sounds corny, but I was so grateful for the opportunity here. I didn't know where New Jersey was when I got drafted.
Well, this is the thing. I was told by one of our listeners, Dave German, who's a big sports fan, emailed me and said, make sure I ask you what happened when you got the phone call that said you'd been drafted as the number 1 pick by the New Jersey Devils.
I've told it many times, and it's kind of a cute, funny story, but I grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, way out west, and kind of the outskirts, small little town, and where hockey is a religion, and there was 10 Ken Daneykos in every corner. So June comes around, it's draft day, and my parents were very supportive, never pushy, but it was my life, and I told my mother every day since 7 years old, 50 times a day, I'm going to play in the National Hockey League. And she, petite lady who just passed away over Christmas, and she's 5'1", and said, yes, Kenny. She would pacify me and say, I know you are, but she didn't think I was being realistic at the time. Well, years go along, and my draft year comes in '82 with a lot of hard work. I'd played junior out in Seattle, and I get the phone call, and I didn't expect to go very high. So the phone rang early. The draft was in Montreal. You got to understand that's a 2-hour time difference because Montreal's the same time as New Jersey. I'm out
you
west.
Eventually found out.
I thought it was my buddies. Playing a prank originally, and saying, I said, Mom, I'm still sleeping. They're not calling me. She says, answer the phone, Kenny. And I said, well, she goes, answer. This is somebody, important. And I go, hi, how are you? And I'm thinking, they go, congratulations, you've been drafted in the first round, 18th overall. There was 21 teams at the time, and we're just screaming in my mom's room, kitchen with my dad and brothers and sisters, and I dropped the phone. I didn't listen to anything else. And my mom goes, don't you think you should ask who it is? I picked the phone up again, not a word of a lie, and go, oh, yeah, who is this? They go, it's the New Jersey Devils. Congratulations. And I turned to my mother and said, where is New Jersey? Not a word of a lie. I had no clue, but I would have ran the 3,000 miles to get my opportunity because, as some people know, 1982 was the original year they came here. Right. I was drafted that year.
From Colorado, right?
From Colorado, you got it.
Now, were they the
Rockies?
They were the Rockies.
Now they're a baseball team. But,
so I was thinking to myself, the Rockies? No, don't be a dope. That's a baseball team.
I might have made that story a little long, but it was.
Yeah, we're out of time, so thanks, Ken. We have our next guest. Will be here in just a few moments.
It was special to me, and lo and behold, 30 years later, came here as an 18-year-old young pup, and.
Wow.
Still here, still involved in the Devils organization. I'm a transplanted Jerseyan. I don't want to be anywhere else. I wear the Jersey name prideful on my sleeve, just like the New Jersey Devils do. And
you're a miserable
in
guy.
All kinds of things.
You are one miserable, negative guy.
All good. And we were bad when we started, by the way. You know that, right?
Oh, I saw some of that. I worked for the Nets at the time, and the rivalry was who's worse. I mean, it was like, you talk about some of these players who've been, he's been with them for 20 years. There's a few Met players I'd like to see shorten their careers if we could possibly work that out. But, it makes it sound like, okay, I'm this kid playing hockey, working really hard. I got drafted, NHL, here I go. I love reading some of the places you played. Before this all. So here we go. The Yorktown Terriers of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. Do you have any memorabilia from them?
Yeah.
How about this? And then the Grateful Americans and the Spokane Flyers, Seattle Breakers. But there's a really good one here.
That's where I was drafted from, Seattle. Yeah, I'm all over the place.
But this one I like. After his injury healed, he was assigned to the Kamloops Junior Oilers.
Yeah.
Where is that?
That's British Columbia. It's
Kamloops?
A small little town. Way out west, north of California. That's the best I can describe it.
Yeah. Well, I think, the other thing that would strike, aside from the fact that you're wearing one of your Stanley Cup rings, which is just slightly ostentatious, it's a little larger than the glasses we use in this place. But the fact that you were a defenseman, I think you took pride in the fact that there were 5 seasons you scored no goals, because that's not what you did.
I tried to keep him out of the net. Look, anytime I did, it was fun for the team and got the bench excited, but my role was to protect our great goaltender who's still playing to this day, Marty Brodeur. For a lot of my career, I played in front of him, and he tells some good stories that he says Dano didn't score much, but certainly if I had any problems, I would take care of business.
Well, we'll get back to that business in a moment. No, but I think were you ever under any pressure at all? Because the game has changed to some extent, not unlike baseball, where shortstops before, actually Ernie Banks was probably the first shortstop I was aware of who could hit home runs. It was like, hey, listen, just hit 220 and catch everything. That's all they worried about from the shortstops. And then it changed all the way up, or down to, depending how you look at it, A-Rod, and, where they became home run hitters and they became part of the whole package. When you started playing, was it more acceptable then to be a non-scoring defenseman? Or has the game changed?
Yeah, no, it's changed somewhat, but teams are still, come playoff time, always looking for a good stay-at-home defenseman.
Yeah.
And I obviously had to play physical. It's a physical sport, and I had to protect teammates at times.
What would make you think that you played physical? Were there any indications of that in any of your statistics?
But I will tell
here?
you, coming out of junior, most guys, even me, I was an offensive defenseman. I mean, I had other attributes like size and physicalness and block shots and those kinds of things. But when I got to this level, only a select few can be an offensive defenseman. And I will tell you another quick, funny story. Lou Lamoriello, who's still the general manager of the Devils today, took me into. He came in '88. I'd already played 4 or 5 years, and he was kind of the orchestra of.
See, I think Lamoriello and funny in the same sentence makes no sense to me whatsoever.
People that don't know, a very disciplined man. And I was around Bunks' kid, by the way. I like to have fun off the ice and on the ice, and I was in his office quite often, but anyway, he told me about he just got to the team, and I'd played 3-4 years already, and he said, Kenny, I got a little power play time, which means I was producing a little bit. One of our power play defenseman, Bruce Driver, was injured, and when he came back, I got no more power play time, and I went in his office all angry and going, I produced. I mean, you want to do everything, and I was 23 and very intense kid, and he goes, Kenny, I liken my team to an orchestra. There's pianists, there's violinists, there's drummers. Which category do you think you fall in? He says, you want to play 5 years or do you want to play 15 years? He says, you better understand your role here. And fortunately enough, I was stubborn, but I was smart enough to listen to him. And I ended up playing 20 years here in New Jersey because I honed what was going to keep me around and make me an integral part of the team to help us win along the way. And you find that with a lot of athletes that sounds simple, but a lot of guys don't ever find their role, and they want to do more than they're capable of, and you find yourself out of the league. And I don't care what sport it is. I'm a sports junkie and follow baseball certainly very closely, my other love, but in football. But he taught me so much in that first. I went out of there angry, believe me, because I wanted to do more. Yeah. But I adhered to his advice, and it did me pretty good, and we went on to win 3 Stanley Cups that I was very proud to be part of.
Sure should be. So were you a violinist, a piano player, or were you a drummer?
Well, I'm going to let you figure that one out.
I'm thinking drummer.
You nailed it. I mean, that's
you know what
you're going to
call
stay at home, you're going to protect teammates, you're going to block pucks with your face, and we'll be okay. Get out of here.
You know what they call a guy who hangs around with musicians? A drummer. So anyway, just thought I would.
Just like, you're a music guy, right? The
well, I haven't proved it yet.
The little rough around the edges guy, not quite as smooth. The violinist, a little better hands.
So I'm curious about this though, because a lot of, I wouldn't say purists necessarily, but people that like scoring in hockey hated your team. Because you got, and I don't know a whole lot about hockey, but you developed a stifling defense, a trapping defense, a zone, I guess it was of sorts. And did you feel that this in a way, I don't mean to insult you with it, but was it the fact that you walked into a defensively minded organization help you, or were you part of what made them defensively?
Well, I was just having that conversation with my buddies over there.
Oh, we're repeating things?
That was the biggest fallacy out there. It's just because we had the best 6 defensemen you could put out there. We had the best goaltender in the world. Every year they kept saying that when we were winning championships, we were number 1 in the league in scoring. In the whole league, we were number 2 one of the Stanley Cup years. But because nobody
You're not getting angry at me now, are you?
It's just the media still has that perception, but we were just that damn good at it.
Yeah.
Every team would do it if you could win championships like that because it's about winning. But we scored a lot of goals as well. It just was very balanced out, and we weren't a high-flying West Coast offense, but we still scored a lot of goals. Yeah. It's just that when we were defending, we were extremely good at it.
I'm sticking with my theory. I know.
Everybody's got your theory.
I've already admitted I don't know anything.
To it, but not from you because I've heard it for years.
Wow. So it's not true. And next it's going to be Santa Claus. I don't know what the heck's going on here with you. So what about the physical toll? I've told this story before. My roommate in college was the goalie on our hockey team, and back then, because I'm old,
I'm getting up there too.
Gump Worsley was just finishing up. I'm not kidding.
And he wore no mask.
He didn't have a mask, and it wasn't mandatory yet. There were no real rules, and there was no helmets.
Insanity.
And all
I can't believe those.
And my roommate was when they first started doing masks, and all it really was almost like a Halloween mask made out of plastic. Just put it in front of your face, and it didn't do a lot. Yeah. And I would get these phone calls, and he wouldn't even say hello. He'd go, "Hey," I'd say, "What room?" And he'd go, 533. Okay, what do you want? I'll take a burger and a frap, because it was Massachusetts. It's a frap. It's not a milkshake. So I just go to the room and visit him because he took a couple more of his head. I mean, you're so good-natured about this, and you laugh about it. And I know the famous pictures of you with no teeth and stuff like that. It must have been very difficult. The physical demand had to be tough.
You know what? I loved it. Everybody asked me that, and were you scared at times when you had?
I'm asking you questions that everybody asks.
No. But I mean, sometimes, especially in the '80s, there was a lot more fighting, and I had to be one of those guys early on to get my foot in the door and then develop my game. But I had to do that, so I did lose a few teeth there, blocking pucks, sticks in the face. But it was a dream since 7. And like I said, I told my mother every day. So to be able to play in the greatest league in the world of what I wanted to do since a little boy was, to me, a few teeth and a few stitches wasn't too bad. A broken nose here and there. I accepted that along the way. And then, yes, my last picture was me raising a Stanley Cup with a Grizzly 2003. I went out on top, Game 7. And I had a Grizzly Adams beard, all gray, 13 teeth missing in front. So 2 years later, I'm doing broadcasting with the Devils, and I do that now, analysis for the team. And I get fans coming up to me all the time going, boy, you look different. I go, you didn't think I was walking around like that for the rest of my life. That was the reason I retired. I wanted to clean up a little bit. So, yeah, it was a great run. Enjoyed it. But, yeah, look, it's physical. It's tough. But I wouldn't have changed a thing.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was watching a little bit of the Blackhawks game the other night. Kings, right? Blackhawks. And a fight breaks out. And you did just allude to it. And again, I'm going to ask you something else everybody asks you. I'm tired of this show already.
But it hasn't been asked for a long time. But I'm just reminiscing. I've been around a long time. So I'm talking just within conversation. Doesn't mean on air I was asked.
But they let the two guys fight until the one guy went down and then they stop it. It's still, to me, an odd thing to see officials standing there watching two guys fight. I know the culture of your sport. God help me. I used to work for Roller Hockey International. Remember that little bad boy?
Yeah.
That was a scary league. I mean, they were the angriest men in the world who got cups of coffee or not much else in the NHL. And if they found a guy who was French on the other side, he was not going to do well that day. But, the violence in the sport, what's your take now?
Look, they've cleaned it up, curbed it tremendously over the years as far as the senseless fighting. But to me, it's a product of the game for 100 years. It doesn't happen like the brawls like you used to see when I came into the game. I was part of that. I knew it was part of the game. I even enjoyed it at times. Yes, I was scared sometimes. Yeah. But they've cleaned up the game, the speed. I love the new game as well. But it's still physical, and there's, but you take a risk playing our sport. It's part of it. The two guys that you happen to see fight, they never fight. They're two superstars. That's how intense the playoffs get. It was, I believe, Jonathan Toews and somebody else. And I know I saw the other day Patrice Bergeron of Boston and Evgeny Malkin, two of the best players in the National Hockey League, who do that once a year. But it shows how important it is to these guys win. And look, we're not going to get away from it completely. It's a physical sport, tempers flare, and frankly, a lot of fans like it. I mean, because you have that element, and it might happen once every 5 games nowadays. The old days, it was like I went to a fight in a hockey game, broke out, was the old saying, you know what I mean? Now it's not that way at all. It's speed, finesse. These guys are so skilled to be skating on those thin blades and making the moves they are, and the great players, but it's also contact, and that's what makes it such a element of surprise, because even a fight, the anticipation of it won't always happen. So you got a little bit of everything. You got speed, finesse, skill, and you got a little boxing, physicality. You got hitting like football. What else could you ask for in a sport?
Well, I think what bothers people is when it's reprisal stuff in a next game, or it's 8 games later, or it's 6 months later, and someone doesn't know it's coming.
Well,
and you've seen that with great players who've had their careers shortened or ended.
The penalties are stiffer and stiffer now. Suspensions. They take a lot more money out of your pocket. Guys are, it's all I can say is it's been curbed tremendously.
It's funny because of course, the worst fights in all professional sports are baseball fights. I mean, it's just like,
hey, would you like a 100-mile-an-hour fastball thrown at your head?
Right.
But they're horrible.
It's just as dangerous.
But they all kind of go out there and dance,
The truth of the matter is, when you see two guys drop their gloves and go at it, I don't know the percentage, but as far as serious injury, from that compared to a big hit or a puck to the head or a fastball, it's very minuscule, believe it or not. That's the way it is.
Because the interesting thing was watching the Miami Heat series against Indiana recently. I mean, to some extent, it looked to me like the officials, I've seen thousands of basketball games. It looked like the officials had said, we're going to let them play. We're going to play physically, because bodies were flying. And yet they don't retaliate with each other because it's not part of the culture of the sport. And they're not supposed to hit each other, whereas in your sport, actually, checking is part of the sport. It's there. So checking is going to, I presume.
And basketball's still physical, but you're right. You're not allowed
it's a foul.
Body check somebody.
It's a foul.
You block out, it's a foul.
Theoretically, anyway.
It's been part of the game for years, and fans still love that physical stuff. If it was like a pond hockey game and there was no hitting, I guarantee you we'd have no fans in the seats.
Well, that's
what it is.
I don't care how skilled they are and with the puck and things like that. It just wouldn't be the same.
Well, Ken Daneyko, I want to ask you, too, because one of the reasons you were so beloved by fans, and I'm not exaggerating, you really were, and you know it, too. Those Devils fans adored you. And it was also your community activities, and you're doing stuff now that I think you should tell people about. Yeah,
no, I get involved in a lot of Jersey charities, but one's a little closer near and dear to my heart is a place called Center for Great Expectations, where they have a facility in Somerville, New Jersey that takes teenage girls off the streets that are addicted to drugs and addiction and alcohol and are pregnant, and they house them and they clean them up, and it's a miracle what they've done with these girls. So I've lent my name to them I think I'm going on my 7th year. I have a golf classic, the Ken Daneyko Golf Classic, on July 11th. That's suburban in Union, New Jersey, and it's just a great cause. I go do a lot of these golf charities with other athletes or different big charities like Make-A-Wish Foundation, all of them.
Sure.
They're wonderful, or March of Dimes, but the little guys need the help too. And I've seen the growth of this organization, the people working for it, and how much they care. And I've dealt with addiction and things like that, so it was a little closer to my heart. And I'm amazed what they do. And this golf outing, if you can come support it, great. It's a great time. I have guys like Tony Saragusa, your other athlete
Another
buddies,
low-key guy.
the boxer, Jerry Cooney.
No outsized personalities.
Few of my Devils, Jimmy Dowd, who I know has been on the show, and Grant Marshall. So
thank
nice
God you didn't
small
talk to
event.
Jim Dowder. You wouldn't be here.
We're all golf fanatics. It's a great, smaller event. But
What's the date again?
July 11th, and it's.
How do they find you?
They find me the Center for. Let me look. Can I look at my?
You can
phone?
look. We'll kill
Because
some
I
time
get
here while
confused.
you're doing that.
It's
Does anyone
coming.
have a
These are-
request for Tim to play a song? While we...
Here we go. I'm going to give it to you real quick, and I appreciate you bearing with me so I don't mess this up.
Absolutely.
The Center for Great Expectations.com. You can sign up for the golf outing July 11th. Anybody listening out there, get to meet some great athletes. You get to have a lot of fun. You play your own ball. Usually these events are scramble. People
No, see, I
appreciate
like
it.
the scramble.
But a lot of the golfers like their own
Can
ball.
I play someone else's, please?
But if you
Or can I play 3 or 4 at once? That would
even if
be-
you don't go to the golf outing, if you look
Yeah.
up this charity, they're wonderful people. They do great things for girls that are struggling, at a young age and get themselves caught up in the wrong thing. And they clean them up, and they've done miracles. The Center for Great Expectations .com. They can find out all about it, and I appreciate you letting me plug it.
Well, please. Thank you so much for being here. Ken Daneyko, 3-time Stanley Cup winner, which matched your uniform that was hung from the rafters there by the Devils, a retired uniform. So wonderful of you to come here today. Ken Daneyko, everyone.
Pleasure being here, guys.
Thanks, Ken. For those of you who just joined us, you're listening to the Tim McLoone Radio Show from Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park, New Jersey. We will be right back after this. Welcome back to the Tim McLoone Radio Show from Tim McLoone Supper Club in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Tim, I just wanted to remind everybody that this portion of the Tim McLoone Radio Show is brought to you by My Jovi. My Jovi is the power coffee, a new refreshing coffee beverage served cold, over ice, or right out of the can. My Jovi can be enjoyed as an after-dinner drink or as a mixer with premium rum or scotch or vodka. It's for anyone on the go. Remember that My Jovi is the first drink at last call. It's a responsible choice, and you can enjoy My Jovi at all the McLoon's restaurants. My Jovi, ask for it by name.
My Jovi. I'm
My
asking.
Jovi.
I'm asking.
Yeah, send one up here.
So it was great having Ken Daneyko here, and I forgot to tell him, maybe it's a good thing. But, I'm sitting here actually playing the keyboard, and I was sharing with him earlier that years ago I worked for the Nets while he was playing for the Devils.
Right.
And one time people think that there's an organist in the building, and in most cases now there isn't anymore. And it was on tape. And the guy that was doing my job for the Devils called over and said, our computer blew up last night. We have none of our organ stuff. There's nothing there, and it's that.
An organist, right? Dun, dun.
It's all that genius stuff that somebody wrote once upon a time. It's Bach, I believe, is what it is. And can you help us out? Do you know anybody that can do it? And I said, well, I'm a piano player. I'll do it. And they said, you sure? And I said, sure. So I went to a studio, do the thing. I bring it in the next day because they're playing this other team called the Rangers, I think is their name. And it was real important that they had this together. Well, Herb Brooks, who people might remember from the Olympic team and that great story in the movies rolling around on late night again with Kurt Russell and Miracle on Ice, all that good stuff. Well, Herb Brooks was the coach at the time, and things weren't going well, and he was under a lot of pressure. So they play this tape, and about 3 days later, there's a story in the paper of him complaining, even the organist doesn't know what he's doing. It's like, I'm getting killed, and I wasn't even there. So I thought it sounded
the wrong
okay.
Key, Tim. It's the wrong key.
I gave it my best shot. But anyway, I've been... There's been 3 people who have been enjoying me doing songs. None of them are here tonight, but I'm going to do one of my songs that I wrote a couple years ago. I spent most of my younger musical career playing in bars, doing piano bar.
Which is why you bought one eventually,
Because
so you had a place to play.
I wouldn't get fired anymore. I always told all of our employees, I have been fired more than any of you combined. So don't even start complaining about this. But anyway, I wrote a song back then called Piano Bar from Hell, and I dedicated, we were playing at the Rum Runner at the time, and we had this great little piano bar, and Barbara King, who's been on this show, and Bruce Foster, who, as I like to point out, Grammy Award nominated but didn't actually win the Grammy. He's been on this show, and I actually wrote it for them, and for myself, for that matter, because the piano bar experience is a very different one. In a future show, we'll talk about some of my greatest nights playing piano bar and things that happened right in front of me. And I'm thinking of one now, but we'll do it in a future show. That's the cliffhanger.
All right.
But anyway, this is the Piano Bar from Hell. Now, right from the start, they knew this guy was somebody special. He played so well, he made the ladies swoon, and he sang his little songs, and if they were good, he'd let them sing along, and never once sang out of tune. In fact, his future was bright and full of promise. We were all sure he was headed for the big time, the Rum Runner Piano Bar. But after all the years, the champagnes, Bloody Marys, and the beers, well, he found himself on the downside of his prime. That's why you'll never hear him on your FM radio or on your MTV. You'll only find him in your neighborhood bar, performing diligently. He tries to put a smile on all your happy little faces. He hopes you'll tip him well, but if you ask him deep down inside how he really feels, he'd say, welcome to the piano bar from hell. Now he's got his memories and his feelings about Chicago, New York, San Francisco, some other little toddling towns, and you will light up his life if you request Mac the Knife, but please try to avoid sending the clowns. That was a big one, but now it's Bublé, Beyonce, or something by Bon Jovi, Alicia Keys, some hip-hop tunes that hurt his head, Bruno Mars, Maroon 5, and even Bruce Springsteen, but they still say, can you play something by the Dead? And that's why you'll never hear him on your FM radio or on your MTV. You'll only find him in your neighborhood bars, performing diligently. He tries to put a smile on all your upturned happy little faces. He hopes you'll tip him well, probably not, but after all these and all the Bloody Marys and the beers, he say this is definitely the piano bar from hell. And uh-oh, here comes that lady sucking down her 5th martini. And tonight it's going to be just his luck, because she's going to want to hear the whole damn overture from Phantom of the Opera and then make a big deal about tipping him a buck. And in conclusion, we know that Billy Joel has his own problems, and to solve them, I'm sure he's got some master plan. But if he walked in here, sat down, and even ordered a beer, well, I'd wring his neck for writing that damn song called Piano Man. And that's why you'll never hear us on your FM radio or Sirius or anything, or on your MTV. You'll only find him in a Seabright bar, performing diligently. He tries to put a smile on all your hopeless little faces. He hopes you'll tip him well, but if you ask him down inside how he really feels, he'd say, this is the piano bar from hell. I did it go. I don't know what I'm up to.
So this portion of the Tim McLoone Radio Show is brought to you by My Jovi. My Jovi's a power coffee, a new refreshing coffee beverage served over ice or right out of the can. Ask for My Jovi at any of the McLoon's restaurants. It's the first drink at last call and the responsible choice. You can enjoy My Jovi at all of the McLoon's. My Jovi, ask for it by name. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we will be right back after this. Welcome back. You're listening to the Tim McLoone Radio Show. This portion of the Tim McLoone Radio Show is brought to you by Batch 19, a fine craft beer from 10th and Blake Beer Company. Passionate brewers and merchants of the world's finest specialty brews. Batch 19, ask for it wherever fine craft beers are poured. And now, here's your host, Tim McLoone.
I think I hurt myself singing that song before, but thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for being here in Asbury Park. And I want to tell you that Gary U.S. Bonds will be here in the Supper Club, Tim McLoone Supper Club, on Friday, June 14. And you got to see that guy crank it. He is, I think he's 73, 74, and it's just like it was 1965, and he's doing all those great songs that he wrote. But anyway, we have a wonderful guest, and we don't want to take any more time. Sorry about the song there, but Carlos Rodriguez, who's the executive director of the Food Bank of Monmouth and Ocean Counties right here in New York. Carlos Rodriguez, thanks so much.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So when did you take over that job?
Just a little over a year ago, so about 14 months or so.
How's it been?
No one planned for a hurricane as part of my one-year plan.
Yeah.
It's been
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's been a tremendous challenge, but very rewarding at the same time.
Well, before we come back to that, I'm just curious. As a young guy, I mean, did you think, were you going to go into social service? Is that what you thought? Or?
No, actually, the complete opposite. I went into college as an economics major, and I had internships in Wall Street, which was a big deal, having grown up in the Bronx. Halfway through, I come home.
My mom's from Woody Crest Avenue, just so you know.
Woody Crest, yeah. I grew up right off the concourse on 169th Street.
And my grandfather was a guard at the Botanical Gardens. So
there you go.
It all comes together. We talk about this as 6 degrees at Tim McLoone. This is not about you, Carlos. It's really, it's about how well do you know me and how am I doing?
It feels like more for like 4 or 3 degrees down here. Yeah. But interestingly enough, I went in as an economics major. I guess I was looking for more answers than economy was offering me. Wow. Switched to sociology. You can imagine the look on my parents' face.
Yeah, that's really going to pay off.
That's really going to pay off.
Those people make tons of money.
Literally found an ad in in a Spanish paper as I was flying to Puerto Rico for a vacation with my family. Applied for it. It was a not-for-profit. I had no not-for-profit connections or anything like that in New York. I went to school up in New England. And then long and behold, I guess the rest is kind of history. I try to get out a couple of times and just kind of brings me back in.
Well, you're a distressingly young-looking guy. So you're really irritating the heck out of me. But how old were you when you first started getting into that work?
Well, I was 5.
Right out of college?
It was right out of college. So it was really right out of college, and it took me about a good 10 years to go back and get my master's. I wanted to make sure I did something that was going to further my career. And again, I try to figure out if this is something I'm going to do long term, or if this is just my opportunity to give back and then try to do something else. And you find a niche, you find a purpose, you stick with it.
Well, you sure did. I mean, is this the first food bank you've worked at, or had you done?
No,
others?
I actually came here from New York City. I was working in New York City and at the food bank for New York City for about 6 years. But I've been doing anti-hunger and anti-poverty work for about 18 years.
Well, so it brings us to Hurricane Sandy, which I can only imagine. There's enough problems with hunger as it is, but that had to have exacerbated it just beyond belief.
Well,
what took place in the world of Monmouth and Ocean's food bank?
Well, let's just look around. I mean, this was the second storm that hit our shores. The first storm was really the economic crisis of a few years ago, where our distribution of food increased by about 84%.
Really?
And that's just because of the economic crisis. So since Sandy, which is just 7 months ago or so, we've distributed even a record amount of food. We'll probably end our fiscal year this June distributing upwards of 8.2 million pounds of food. Wow. And most of that was in the last few months. So obviously everyone that was in need before the storm is in more dire need now, and then you have all the folks that were displaced, the many folks who don't have a job this summer. Or needed that economy, or had a job and it was literally washed away. That's who we're serving. It's always it's a continuous flow over the last few years of new people who never thought that this is what their lives would bring.
Do you have to help people overcome the stigma of coming to you for help?
Constantly.
Yeah.
Constantly. I mean, we literally have folks who used to help us with food drives now join us on the other side of the line and ask for help. And that's difficult. That's really difficult to see. But it's also very grounding, how we're really all just a moments away or a couple paychecks away from a reality like that.
You know, it's interesting. I think often about one of the early fundraising balls that the food bank had. This is a long time ago. It's got to be at least 20 years. And as I say every week when I say it's got to be 20 years, it turns out to be 43, you know. But I can remember there was a problem. It was a black tie event, and people paid a lot of money, and a lot of money was raised, and it all went to the worthy cause and all that good stuff. But it was also pretty opulent food that was being served. Well, the kitchen had a problem, and because there were a number of restaurants contributing, and they're all back in the kitchen, and it's not working, and the food just didn't come out. It just wasn't coming out. And I remember thinking at the time, imagine if it wasn't ever going to come out, what that would feel like, you know, for all the, and I mentioned something, I was emceeing that night, and I mentioned it to everybody. I got up there and said, well, now, we didn't mean to, but you just got a little taste of what this must be, and you've been waiting for half an hour. Imagine if you're not, you know, if you're waiting overnight or you're worried about feeding your children. So tell us some things that we don't know about what you do, what we don't know about the service of the food bank, myths that people have.
Well, you know us for food, so that's the first thing. But over the last few years, what we're doing is looking at how we can be more comprehensive in our solutions. So yes, we have to provide food for the crisis of not being able to provide for your family any night. But we're looking and understanding that the problem of hunger, unfortunately, is more chronic than not. I mean, we've been around. We're about to celebrate our 30th year here at the Jersey Shore in 2014. So we're looking at how do we deal with this chronic problem? How do we look at the underlying causes of hunger, whether it's poverty or other types of financial or food insecurities, and seeing what we can do to program and engage the community in those type of solutions. So we're doing more actually connecting families with important resources. So food stamp program, as it was known, and the SNAP benefits. It's important for us because A, we don't have enough food to provide for the increased needs. And here we are doing record numbers. Last year we did 7 million pounds of food. This year we did 8.
Record numbers in terms of the demand.
In terms of the demand, and then so we actually have to step up and ask for more food and procure more food. But we know that we need to bring more to the table than just that. So helping to connect families with whether it's benefits, helping them with their taxes. One of our responses for a post-Sandy was to use our knowledge and actually create a free tax program for low and moderate income families. Because if you don't, there's a lot of tax benefits that unless you apply, you don't receive. And so we're trying to get more financial resources in the hands of those who need it so that they can go and shop the way you and I shop in our local markets. We have great markets here in the Jersey Shore. We want families to be able to make the choices that's right for them. So we do that kind of stuff. And we help you with skills. We have a great culinary training program. We train 8 students about 4 times a year in a 12-week course in basic culinary arts. They all get what's called a Safe Serve certification. They do some job shadowing, and it's an opportunity for them to learn some new skills, get our assistance in job placement, and hopefully improve their lives.
Because I think it's terrible when people want to criticize programs like this, or they just want to, in a sense, put down the people who've already been put down by life. You can't go much farther. They'll say things like, well, they take the food stamps and they buy ice cream and Oreos, you know. I just think some of those things are just so, they really are myths, you know.
They are.
Because you see it every day. And I'm sure there are people that do that, but, you know, my family does that. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny about it. I mean, you know, we don't make all great choices. But it's got to, so do you worry at all about the effects of the sequester and what's happening from sort of the top down from our government and how that's going to play out and what money comes to the state and how much of your funding comes from governmental sources?
Probably about 40% comes from government sources, and maybe a little bit more when you actually talk about food. So we try to diversify our resources as much as possible, because when one area is not working, you got to depend on the other area. So we get a good chunk of food, actual commodities that come down to the federal government. We've received some funding from the state as well, allows us to purchase food. And then of course, we wouldn't be what we are without local donations of both food and funds. So we are concerned not just about the direct impact of the sequester and of other decisions that are being made in Washington, not only directly to us, but what about the families? If they were depending on, let's say, a WIC or a housing voucher or a housing benefit, they no longer have that, guess what's going to get sacrificed? The food budget. That's always the first thing that gets sacrificed. Is
that right?
That's absolutely right. A lot of research shows if you have a medical issue and you have to dig into your pocket, well, you got to take care of your health. If all of a sudden you had a subsidy that was helping you get to work and you no longer have that, well, you want to get to work. And if you don't have any of those things, you're going to take out of your pocket first and take care of that and then go without a meal. So what's the consequences of that? A child going to school hungry, a mom going to work hungry. What does that do for productivity? What does that do for our future?
I think when people who are very mean-spirited and just look down upon these people as freeloaders, basically that's the deal. You know, even if they want to take it on a practical level, if we don't do the appropriate measures to help people, take care of them in some cases where they just really need to be taken care of. And we talked about it with our friend Bob from the Mental Health Association of Essex County last week, and we referenced it earlier in the show. Yeah, there are people you have to take care of, but there's also people you have to assist to take care of themselves. If you don't do it, we're going to end up paying for it anyway. That's right. So the idea that somehow the taxpayer is going to be spared if we toughen up on these people, and, just some of the rules and regulations that some people would like to see happen, like, one of the ones really forcing people to work, which doesn't always play out in their lives because of disabilities and many other reasons. And yeah, there are always people who are going to cheat the system. There are people you read about every day who are cheating on the stock market, who are cheating by, there was a couple of things today in the paper about people that had just been prosecuted for stealing funds from a Little League. I mean, there's always those people. But to think that somehow other poor people are more inclined to be thieves, I don't know where people are religiously, but I'm very happy that the new Pope, at least in his early teachings and writings, has been very much about wanting to be the Pope of the poor. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I'm sure you'd agree from where you sit at Monmouth Ocean County Food Bank. So you've seen a change, though, you mentioned to me earlier about the Ocean County part of it, that it was pretty much Monmouth dominated, I guess you'd say, before you got here, but there's been a change.
We've actually always served Monmouth and Ocean County, but in the last census, one of the things that really was highlighted was the increase of this disproportionate amount of poverty in Ocean County. So we've been really looking to really aggressively step up our program and increase our program. Now, just about half of what we do in Ocean. So we're pretty evenly split. And we're serving combined about 1 in 10 residents. So we have about 1 in 10 residents of Monmouth and Ocean County combined. So we're touching 127,000 people. So when we talk about who we're serving and who's the freeloader and people who have that kind of perception, look at your neighbor.
Yeah, it's a pretty big group.
That's it. Look at your neighbor. Look at the person down the street. Look at the person who's helping you, whether you go to the store or you go, do your errands. That might be the person that has to come and to one of our programs and get food to make ends meet. Talking about 50% of the families that we serve report having earned income as their primary source of income. But if you had 2 jobs and now you have 1, or you had 2 jobs and now you have half because you're working part-time or you're underemployed, how do you make ends meet? No one's going to reduce your rent or your mortgage payments or your car payments to get to work or anything like that. Yeah. So that's the reality. And so we're doing more to make sure. What we do as a food bank is look at the picture from, or the need rather, from at a macro level. Yeah. And so we're looking at where are those pockets of need, where are the demographics shifting, and we try to make sure that there are programming there, whether partnering with a local charity or church, faith-based or otherwise, or taking our mobile pantry right into the community and distributing food directly.
So do you get discouraged? Or is it the kind of job that you feel is uplifting? I'm just curious. On your day-to-day job, when you're trying to feed, in essence, poor people, needy people, whatever euphemism we want to put on it, there must be times when it's frustrating that you're feeling you're not getting anywhere.
Well, you see the numbers, and it's like, wow, I just did so much more. It's another record year, but look at the numbers, look at the need. And then you break it down, how much food. So, yeah, it could get a little discouraging. But then you get a note. You get a note like the one I received very recently from a senior in Brick. And she thanked us for the work that we did post Sandy to help bring in hot meals to the residents there. But she very simply wrote, but you do that every day, and it makes a difference between me and some of my neighbors and some of my seniors' friends from going hungry. And that's it.
Yeah. Well, how can people get in touch with you? Because I'm sure there are many people listening to this who'd like to donate to the food bank.
The best way is just to visit our website, learn more of what we do and how we do, and it's foodbankmoc.org. You can learn how to volunteer your time, some food, or your funds.
Foodbankmoc, like Monmouth Ocean County.org. Well, Carlos Rodriguez, we admire so much. And I know what you would say. You're here representing a lot of other people who work with you, your board, and all the volunteers who do that with you. But it's wonderful work. And part of the problem is people tend to think of you at Thanksgiving and Christmas, and there's nothing wrong with that, But I'm sure, are there other times of the year where the need really gets sort of out of hand?
Hunger is a year-round problem, and right now our biggest concern is school is out. And so all those children who depended on a free school lunch or a school breakfast now don't have that. So we need to make sure that the families have food to go home to.
Well, Carlos Rodriguez, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Right here on our show.
So you're listening to the Tim McLoone Radio Show. I just wanted to let everybody know that next week's show we're going to have TV personality and CBS legal analyst Jack Ford on the show. And then from the Shirleys, we're going to have singer and songwriter Maureen McCrink. That's going to be fun. And then all throughout the summer, we have Joe Piscopo nights here at Tim McLoone's Supper Club in Asbury Park. So check out our website or give us a call and make reservations. Come out and visit us. Thank you for tuning in today and sharing this hour with us. Tune in every Saturday afternoon from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. right here on WOR 710 a.m. and on iHeartRadio. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and on Twitter at Tim McLoone Radio. The accounts and descriptions of this broadcast are the property of McLoone Broadcasting.
We own them all.
The retransmission or rebroadcast of any part of the Tim McLoone Radio Show without express written consent from McLoone Broadcasting is strictly prohibited.
Really? Strictly?
Strictly prohibited. This show is produced by TME. The coordinating producer is Virginia Sanderson. The technical director and associate producer is Dana Noto. Our sound engineers tonight are Tony Lasardo and Thomas Bishop. For Tim McLoone, I am Paul Diomede, and we will see you next week on the radio.